Today, we have in the Story Warrior virtual studio, or I prefer to call it a virtual fireside, someone whom I consider a magician. Yes, magician in quotes. You may be saying, Gideon, I don't know you're into magic. I don't know you're into esoteric topics. I don't know you're into. No, I mean magic as in the sense of how do you create wealth? Because sometimes when you see somebody so successful, you think that they're doing magic. But do you know that behind every successful person, there's someone who has taught them the methods of how to make that wealth or how to make that magic? Behind the madness, there is a method. Today, we have Madame Subumi Plumter, who is, I think, a magic maker, although she would like to call herself a wealth generation champion for Africans both in the motherland and Africans in diaspora. I am so fortunate that I met her in the diaspora through the auspices of the African think tank. Were it not for the African think tank, I don't think I would have been fortunate to meet this amazing sister, this amazing professional who is crushing it in her own way, crushing it at home and away. So, Madam Plumter, tell us, uh, your name is very unique.
Yeah.
We cannot, I can easily designate, I can easily pull string and say this one comes from where. Your name is, it doesn't give away any, it doesn't give away any clues at all. Tell us, where is Madame Subimi Plumter from?
Okay, so I'm originally from Nigeria, and the full name is actually Adeshubomi. So it means wealth and everything that it represents. Power, honor, glory
What?
completely surrounds me.
No kidding.
That's
Adeshumi means wealth. Wow, your parents know a thing or two about giving perfect names. How come they never, my parents never talked to your parents? See a name they gave me? Fomukwai. Fomukwai. Now, Fomukwai means torch bearer, but not,
wow.
torch bearing has nothing to do with uh, wealth. Wealth is a lot more, it can change the world. And you have been changing the world right from Dallas, Texas, where you live. You have been doing some incredible work here and there. But if you don't mind, tell us a little bit about you in terms of the work that you do in the current circle. Not years ago. We'll get to the years ago a little bit later.
Okay, I mean, thank you, Dr. Gideon. So, anytime I talk about wealth, I tell people that I'm not a traditional wealth expert. Like, if you were looking for traditional wealth advice, you could walk into the office of any CPA or any fund manager, and they would give you the traditional ways to make money. You can watch, 1,001 TikTok videos or YouTube videos, and you will probably find information
Yeah.
on how to create wealth. So that's not what I do. My strength and my model is the power of community. So what I realized, in my practice as a fund manager, and now, running an asset management company, a SEC licensed asset management company in Africa, and a global fund as well out of the Cayman Islands. One of the things that I learned was, just as it takes a village to raise a child, it
Mhm.
takes a community to create generational wealth.
Wow.
So you cannot do it alone. And
Mm.
what did we do? What we realized was a lot of the middle class are shut out of valuable investment opportunities. So if
Mhm.
you talk to a CPA today or a fund manager, they're going to tell you that as a middle class individual, the only investments that are available to you are probably mutual funds or your
Mhm.
401k or your
Mhm.
insurance plan.
Mhm.
You will never have the capacity or even the risk appetite,
Mhm.
to participate in a lot of the high value deals like hedge
Mhm.
funds,
Mhm.
private equity,
Mhm.
venture funding.
Mhm.
So what we did was we realized that the only way to give the middle class access to all
Yes.
of these high value investments was to pull them into a group. So what we
Mm.
did was to create a cooperative model, because cooperative model is native to Africa. We that's something we've used traditionally to
I
create
sel I
community
seldom
wealth.
pull the vuvuzela this early. I'm pulling it up already. The traditional
Yes,
model
that's what
of
we did.
collaboration of
Yes,
communities. In Cameroon, they call it
community.
jangi. Please talk
So
talk
what
about
we
it.
did was to bring thousands of people into one massive community.
No
And
kidding.
that community became an institutional fund that now controls millions and millions of dollars. So now we have a seat at the table at any hedge fund. We can participate in equities. We can participate in venture funding. I'll talk a little bit about the movie deal that we did that became one of the most successful African movies on Netflix. And the beauty of this model is that no matter what you bring into the community, whether it's as little as $100 or as much as $1,000, everyone gets the same rate of return because it is a community model. So that way we're able to distribute the same returns that an institution would get, the same returns that a high net worth individual would get. We're able to distribute that to the middle class because we
Wow.
came together as
Yes.
one massive community. So that's what I'm preaching: community wealth, not individual wealth.
Whew. Talk about community wealth to Africans. We are egalitarian communities. We
Yes.
believe that if I'm sharing a piece of
Yeah.
yam and somebody's
Yeah.
sitting on the other side without something, I'm gonna cut that piece of yam and share with them.
Yes.
It's normal
Yeah.
in our communities.
Yeah.
It's not always normal in other communities. So
Yeah.
you're telling me that you're taking this concept from back home, which is if I can eat, you can eat. We
Yes.
all can eat. You're taking that
Yes.
concept and you've planted it into the world of finance, which
Yes.
is an esoteric world. It's very different for us because we're
Yes.
not raised thinking about equity and thinking about all those things that fund managers talk about on a daily
Yeah.
basis. So you're bringing regular African diaspora into the mainstream and helping them
Yes.
sit around the table, contribute their money, put into a big pot. Then you use that
Yes.
money to invest it and you give it back to them. Is that what you're
Exactly.
saying?
Yes. Yes. And that's the
Wow.
model.
Wow.
And even and what is exciting about this model is
Yes.
for the first time the middle class is able to afford private wealth advisors. I'm sure you've noticed, even in your bank account, that once your deposit hit a certain level, you get an email from the
Yes.
bank. They
Yep.
introduce some new products
Yep.
that you never knew
Yes.
existed
And if it's a
while you
certain
were
above a
just
certain amount, they start asking you,
exactly,
calling you to talk to you. If it was when
exactly.
it was low, nobody was calling you. When
Nobody
it
was
reaches a
calling.
certain threshold, they start to call you.
Yes. And that's what we've done. We've now made private wealth advice available to the middle class. Because as a community, they're talking to us as a group. They're
Yes.
not talking to us as individuals. So
Yes.
when you control millions of dollars, the bank calls you,
Yes.
fund managers call you as an institution. And the
Mm.
beauty about it is that the cost to each individual member is so
Very,
negligible.
very, very, very
You
minimal.
can imagine if you have 3,000 members, for example, and in an investment cooperative, how much is each person going to pay for due diligence? Because it is
Yes.
the organization, the
That pays.
institution that is paying. So by the
Exactly.
time you divide that by 3,000 members,
It's
each
minuscule.
person is not even paying anything
Minuscule.
significant. So what we've done is that we've made professional services available to the middle class, private wealth advice available to the middle class, high level of due diligence available to the middle class, all at a pittance because they're pulling their funds together as one community.
Yes. And finally, people will start to pay notice now because anyone who doesn't know the community spirit of Africans is doing
Yes.
so at their own risk.
Oh, yes.
We don't let down someone that easily. So now that we're learning modern finance and we're pulling together, we're getting into these cooperatives, we're going to start sending subtle messages to the rest of the
Oh,
world. Watch
yes.
out, we are coming to town. So tell us, when did you first conceive these ideas? And when do you start planting the seeds? When do you start getting people to start contributing or participating or becoming members of this cooperative investment fund?
Yes, I mean, I tell a lot of people my story. It came from tragedy, but thankfully, it's evolved into something that is now making an impact around the world. So I lost my parents about 8 years ago, within 6 months of each other. And what was painful to me is these were honest and hardworking people. These were people that my dad was a civil servant
Mm-hmm.
who sacrificed and struggled to send his children to, some of the best federal, public universities at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that at the end of their lives, they didn't have enough pensions to speak of, to take care of them at the latter end of their lives. So
Mm-hmm.
I just realized that there needs to be a model that rewards honest and hardworking people. You
Yep.
don't need to be corrupt to become rich. You
Yes.
don't need to know someone in government to become rich. You
Say that.
can live your life as an honest and hardworking person, and at
Mm-hmm.
the end of your days, have enough wealth such that your children do not become your insurance plan. That's what I'm preaching. And that's
Mm-hmm.
really the motivation for why I started this model, that if we're going to give hardworking people a chance, we
Mm-hmm.
need to come together as a group. There's no other way for
Wow.
us to be able to have a seat at the table without
Yes.
us coming together as a community. So
Yes.
that's how the entire model started, through the
Wow.
tragedy of the death of my parents.
Wow. First, my heartfelt condolence. 8 years is still very fresh. That is still not too long ago because at first I can relate to that. I was raised by a single mother who could not even read or write her name. She was not a civil servant. So in her later years, she depended on us. Now, fortunately, we were able to take care of her, but it is not in all cases where someone will have someone
Yeah,
that could take care of them in their later years. So, what you're saying is you do not, you want to reverse, call it a
yeah,
curse, call it
yeah,
a dysfunctional way
yeah.
of living in which you work hard, put your money in some of the pension funds on the continent. Some of them might
Yeah.
misuse it. Misuse it. The one in Cameroon, I know, is probably collapsed. And in your later years, you struggling again to make a living, struggling to make a living, even though you've worked hard, you've been an honest person. So you want to reach the middle class because middle class often doesn't have enough to
Yeah.
compete in the higher echelons of society. So
Yes.
when you founded this firm, where did you plant the seeds? Is it mostly in America or back in Africa? If so, in which areas, which
So we
cities, or which
started in
countries?
Africa, in Nigeria.
Okay.
Now we've expanded into a global fund out of the Cayman Islands. We
Okay.
also serve Africans in the diaspora. So it's one of the reasons why we set up the company in the US to serve as a bridge,
I
because
see.
we realize that there are a lot of Africans in the diaspora who want to invest back home. There are
Mhm.
also a lot of Africans who want to have access to global
Yes.
investment. So the US company helps to serve as a bridge. So what
Okay.
we do is that we partner with global fund managers. So it doesn't matter where you're from, whether you're from Africa, whether you're
Mhm.
from the diaspora, as
Mhm.
long as you're interested in creating wealth. We have partnerships
Mm.
with fund managers all over the world. And
Wow.
that's what we've been doing, replicating the model from country to country,
Mhm.
because we realize that in every country, you can set up a community. You can set up, whether it's a cooperative or what is known in the US as an investment club. There are
Mhm.
different names. This
Yes.
community model goes by different names depending on the
Yes.
country that
Okay.
you're in. But the
Yes.
thing we've done is that at the center of every investment community must be a licensed and regulated fund manager. And we're
Oh,
very deliberate,
there
because
you
we
go.
realize that the problem of communities a lot of time is trust. A
Yes.
lot of people distrust each other
Yes.
within African communities. So
Yes.
what we do is that by putting that licensed fiduciary in the
Mhm.
middle, this is
Mhm.
the person that serves as that basis of trust
Yeah.
and that basis of credibility that ties everybody
Mhm.
together. So we never set up a community without that regulated and
Mhm. Mhm.
licensed
Yes.
fiduciary, because that person has a license to lose. They have
Yes.
a
Yes.
duty to
Yes.
protect,
We need that.
so
We need that.
they become the honest arbiter,
Yeah.
working for the benefit of every single member in the community. And that's how we've been able to preserve trust. I tell a lot of people about 90% of our members have never met each other. 90% of our members have never met us in person. These are people that heard about us through referrals. They heard
Mhm.
about us through family members. They heard about us through friends. But
Mm.
the reason why they trust us is because of the track record and
Mhm.
because they know that we're regulated. For
Mm.
us, that is extremely important, that no matter what country we go to, we
Mhm.
look for a registered professional in that country to represent the investment community.
Yep. I absolutely agree with you. Having skin in the game.
Yeah.
You have somebody who has is a fiduciary. They got
Yes.
skin in the game. Their license is on the line. If you don't do well, you're gonna lose your own
Oh,
source of
yes.
income. And most
Yeah.
people, you don't work hard most of your life to go risk it
Yeah.
by placing risky bets.
Oh,
You're
yes.
now in charge of people's money. You better do a good job of doing your due diligence so you can deliver.
Oh,
So
yes.
when I was preparing for this conversation, I started to think about the metaphors for you. I thought about magician. Clearly, you are making the magic happen. But I also talk about bridge builder. So you're
Hmm.
building bridges between those at home, those here, and
Yeah.
globally because they can contribute, they can
Mm-hmm.
earn without
Mm-hmm.
necessarily meeting one another. So,
Mm-hmm.
uh, how, let's say, how much is an average investor putting in?
Okay, so an average investor, anything from $100 to as much as you want to contribute, because remember it's a large pot. So we
Mhm,
already have millions of dollars in assets under management.
mhm.
So what we've done is to make the minimum entry as comfortable as possible
Possible.
for the middle class, because that is really the target audience. So from as little as $100, you can invest in any community, depending on whether you're in Africa or you're in the
Mm,
diaspora.
wow.
And that's really the way we've created the club.
Okay, so someone is working as a nurse.
Hmm.
Someone is working as an IT technician,
Hmm.
IT engineer. They got an extra three, $4,000 in their
Hmm.
account. They say, you know what? I trust Madam Subumi Plumpter and her people. They can invest 3,000 with you. That's cool. And let's say end of the year, what kind of returns can they expect?
Again, it depends on your risk profile. So we're very clear, because we understand that some people have a very low risk profile, some people have a medium
Yeah,
risk profile. There's some people who have a much higher
hmm,
risk profile. So what we've done is we've created buckets.
I
So
see.
the first thing you do when you come on our platform, it's actually an online platform. We
Hmm,
have a game that you can play that would help you determine your risk profile. We have different resources. We have a free investment course. So
hmm,
even if you don't know anything about investment and all you want to do is learn for free, we have a
hmm.
course, that you can take that is
Wow,
online. So
wow.
once you play the game and understand your risk profile, we then direct you to the different buckets. So
I
for
see.
example, if you're a low risk, you have a low risk appetite,
Hmm.
usually the returns will be about 11% per annum in USD.
That's not
If you
bad.
have a medium risk
11,
profile,
that's pretty
oh,
reasonable
yes,
because
because we're big into some of the best sovereign bonds
yeah.
out there.
Hmm,
If you have a medium risk profile, it can get up to about 15%. If you
hmm,
have a high risk profile, then from about 20% and above. But obviously, with a high risk profile, there's also the risk of loss
losing, yeah.
of capital. So
Yes,
we direct you based on your risk profile, and we always tell people stick with your risk
yes.
profile. Don't invest just because you're seeing like maybe healthy returns and you
That's
think,
right.
oh wow,
That's right.
I want to jump into
That's
something.
right. That's right.
We
No,
say no,
no.
stay with your risk
My
profile. That's one of the things we teach in our investment course.
okay. My risk appetite is relatively low to medium. So I'm definitely not going to go for high because
Oh
I
yes,
always asking myself, okay, will I be able to account for this to my
yeah,
family, to
yeah.
my wife, and even to my own conscience? The
Oh
biggest
yes,
one with my conscience. So I play ball, but I don't play too hard.
yeah,
I don't want to flip over, lose my spine, or that kind of thing. But
yeah.
this is interesting. So tell us before you got started with this cooperative model, what were you doing? I'd like to know a little bit about the past because this channel is dedicated to telling the stories of unsung heroes with untold stories. And I know you've been on other media, but on this particular one, I want us to know go back to when you were not yet known in this world of investment. What were you doing? We want to see an average day in your life. And the part of it is to help people understand you can come from nowhere to somewhere. You can
Oh
come
yeah.
from little money to big money. And as long as you're willing to put in the work, as long as you're willing to put in the time and the patience, you can make it at any level. So take us back to what you were doing before you went into the world of finance.
Okay, so I spent 20 years in the corporate world, and I always use this as a lesson to people who say
Mhm,
that, you can't be an employee or you
mhm.
can't work, for somebody else and then eventually go on to building
20,
something of
20
value. Oh,
years.
yes.
That's a
So
long time. I didn't even think you were
yes,
20. I didn't even think you were up to 20. I'm like, what? Is that the same person?
thank
Maybe
you.
you got to put some glasses. Okay. Okay.
So I served in the corporate world, for
Okay.
20 years as a
That's a long.
strategist. So I was a consultant in
Mhm.
strategy as well as branding and marketing. So I've
Wow.
had a varied experience in terms of just having seen the corporate side, how big businesses are run, how big
Mm.
organizations are structured,
Mhm.
systems, processes,
Mhm.
policies,
Yeah.
and all of that. And then also because of my brand and marketing side, I also know how to build,
Mm.
great brands. I know how to spot great ideas, and
Mm.
being able to then take that into running my own business as
I
an
see.
entrepreneur.
Yeah.
I've co-founded about 3 or 4 companies now, and
Mhm.
just being able to take that experience into entrepreneurship
Mhm.
and doing what I'm doing now. And I tell a lot of people I didn't have a finance background, so I wasn't an accountant. I didn't, go to school to study finance. I literally had to, learn finance because I realized that there was such a gap.
Yeah.
Like there was nobody when I started out, there was nobody who would tell me how I could make $1 million. Like I would
Mm.
literally go to the bank and say, show me a plan. Show me a plan for how I can make $1 million. Take me from
I
here
like
where I
that. I like that. Not many people I know have
Yes,
that
because I
that
wanted to know,
audacity. Yeah.
how do rich people
Make it.
create wealth? So it
Yeah.
must be documented somewhere. Like it must be rich. It's not like now that you have a lot of TikTok videos. Now the
Yes.
information is quite, popular. You have TikTok
Yeah.
videos. You have,
Wow.
videos on YouTube. Then there was nothing. Like you literally had no resource that could
Mm.
teach you how to go from zero to
To
millions.
something. Yes.
Yeah,
So
so I
you
decided I
say
was going to start
you
it.
once thought about it. You once went and said, "Hey, folks, oh, Mr. Banker, tell me, how can I go
Yes.
from where I am to making $1 million?" That's got to
Oh,
be the most
yes.
unique question anybody has ever asked a banker because it's an important question. We think about it, we churn it through our mind, but nobody takes the courage to go in and say, "Show me how to do it." You did it.
And I'll tell you a funny thing. So then I would dress up like an executive, like pretend as if I had $1 million.
Yes, why
Like
not?
I would walk boldly because I didn't want to be stopped by customer service. I wanted to
Hmm.
see the managers,
Hmm.
so I would literally kit up, walk boldly into the bank like I was
Yep.
already worth $1 million
Yep.
and ask to see the manager.
Yes, yes. And they ushered you in.
Oh yes,
Maybe they serve you tea or some coffee while you're waiting. Tell me,
Oh God, it was such a funny experience.
which city was that?
Oh, this was in Lagos. It was such a funny experience. And
Lagos is
the
full of
thing was,
billionaires, so I'm sure
oh
you had
yes,
every right to ask. And
oh
what did
yes.
they tell you, if at all they
No,
did?
it's
Because
like that's when I realized the information was not available. That a
mm,
lot of the banks, a lot of the asset management organizations
mhm.
want to sell you their products
Thank
because
you,
that's all they know.
thank
All
you.
they know is their products. They can't give you independent and objective advice
Yes,
in terms of how you can really create wealth.
worth.
The
Oh,
information is just not there.
yes.
You know? So I just realized that if I was going to help the middle class create wealth, I needed to set up my own asset management company
Mm,
for the middle class. And that's
mm,
what we've done. And literally
wow.
going through the grind of writing the exams, getting the registrations, the license. I mean, this took years.
Hmm.
And,
Hmm.
and what I tell people is when you see a problem in society, never think somebody else is going to solve it.
Solve it.
You may be the one,
Thank you.
that needs to solve that problem.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that. And for those of our viewers who are watching, whether it's in the Middle East, it's in my native Cameroon, it's in Nigeria, it's in South Africa, Botswana, where I work, in Singapore, where I spent a long time. If you're watching this, please pull your chair closer because she's going to share with us a little bit later how she was able to help set up something that led on to be one of the finest Netflix success stories from Africa. We come to that shortly, but you started to put the right bricks, the mortar in place, so that you can help middle class families be able to have a seat at the table or be
Yeah.
able to have the possibility of generating wealth.
Yes.
How long did it take for you to go study, take the exams, pass the exams, and get through all the regulatory bottlenecks to set this up? How long did it take? And the reason I ask that is because some people see you successful, they think, oh my God, Madam Plumter is so lucky. Heck no, she has put in the work. She has been grinding it out. Tell us, how long did that take you? And what were
Oh,
some of the dark days?
all of
What were
this took at least 4 years.
for
And
you?
remember, there was COVID. In the middle of all of this, COVID
Mhm,
happened. So it took about 4 years to really build the rails because we wanted to
mhm,
build something that was enduring,
mhm,
something that would, I mean, I have a co-founder. So
mhm,
we wanted to build something that was enduring, something that would live after us. And for us, it was important to do it in a regulated manner. We
mhm,
didn't want to become one of those African, companies just, doing things anyhow. We
mhm.
wanted to be sure that we were doing things according to the book and we were
Yes,
doing things with the right licenses.
yes.
My co-founder and I always have this thing that we can't hide. Like if you go on my LinkedIn, my entire corporate history is on
Mhm,
my, like you can literally see every single thing I've done. You can actually trace me to my mentors, people I've
mhm,
worked with in the
mhm,
past. We don't have any hidden lives,
mhm,
so
mhm,
we
mhm.
can't
Which
afford
is
to do anything
no.
that casts a negative impression on our reputation. Reputation is extremely important to us because a lot of times in Africa, you find that you can't trace the source of people's wealth or
Wealth.
the source of
Yes,
people's success. But in
yes,
our case, you can literally see every single thing we've done, people we've
yes,
worked with, people
yes.
who can recommend us, and that is very, very important to us.
I love that so much. And part of my storytelling model is ethical storytelling.
Yeah.
I don't want to BS people. That's why I say if you need to cough, cough. If you need to scratch, scratch. If you need to do anything, do it. It has to be real. It has
Yeah.
to be so real because when people see that we're real,
Mm.
we're having a frank and honest conversation, then they can take a sip of water and realize, these are real people. These are not, we're not trying to BS somebody. They didn't go to any Harvard, they didn't go to any place. Matter of fact, my primary school had to study under a tree when the winds had blown away the roof of my
Mm.
primary school. But it did not stop me from my curiosity. It did not
Mm.
stop me from finding, getting mentors from all places and trying to learn from them. So what we are saying here is you being vulnerable, specifying, telling us the grind is part of the process of
Oh,
giving
yes.
transparency to people to know who we are. They look at my own profile, they're also going to find that I did all manners of things, and I cannot even list all of them. I did I did all kinds of oh my goodness. But some of the humbling things that you've done, I believe they have helped you to have an understanding of what the middle class goes through, to
Oh,
have an
yes.
understanding of what parents are struggling with to send their kids to school, to have an understanding of how difficult it is for a middle class person to save enough to retire. And now that empathy has enabled you to create something that they can be proud of. So let's say we go to Nigeria because I know you have a separate company, a separate entity there, a
Yes.
separate entity in America, and you said you're registered in Cayman Islands. So in Nigeria, for example, who are some of the frequent users of the service? Is it civil servants? Is it people who are uh, individual business owners, or in Cameroon we call them bayam salams? Who are these people?
Oh, we have a mix. We have a mix of individual professionals, day-to-day professionals who are working in the corporate sector. We also have civil servants, people working for teaching hospitals, people
Mhm,
working for government agencies, even the military. Like we have a broad range of people, even businesses.
mhm,
So we have a lot of SMEs, a lot of businesses that actually use us as their treasury department to save
mhm,
excess funds. And the beauty of the community is there's just strength in the community, because you find that there's really nothing you need that you can't find from your community. We have
Yes.
quarterly meetings with our
Yes.
community, and just being on those Zoom meetings with the
Mm-hmm.
community, people are able to talk about their investments, ask
Mm-hmm.
questions, and you find out that when you belong to a rich community, there's so much you get beyond even
Yes.
investment,
Yes.
because there's something that binds you together,
Yes.
and nobody wants to risk being booted
Yep.
out of the community.
Yep.
so,
Yep. Yep.
so
Yep.
there's just a lot of networking as well that
Yes.
takes place when you're part of that community.
So that our collectivist philosophy, South Africans call it Ubuntu. It really brings
Yes.
our people
Oh,
together.
yeah.
Ubuntu. I am my brother's keeper. I'm a person because of the other people,
Yes.
and I can learn from the others who are 3, 4, 5 steps ahead of me.
Oh,
So
yes.
who, let's say, in the case of US, I don't think I should ask who are the regular people that are joining, but rather, in what areas are you currently investing, whether it's on motherland or in the wider world of diaspora? What are some of the areas of
We do
interest?
a wide range of investments. So we do a lot of investments in Africa, obviously, because we want to develop Africa.
Yes.
But we know that there's political risk and currency risk in
Mhm.
Africa. So
Mhm.
we're not blind, to that
Mhm.
fact. And that's one of the reasons why we set up the Global Fund, so that we
Mhm.
can invest beyond
Mhm.
Africa, because there are a lot of other opportunities, whether in the US or in
Mhm.
other, developed countries where you can invest.
Yeah.
So we're very particular. Yes, we have investments, in Africa, particularly some of the exciting sectors like movies.
Mhm.
But at the same time, we do the traditional assets,
Mhm.
equities, venture funding,
Mhm.
and some alternative investments as well. So we're a broad-based investment group. And
Mhm.
we're very proud of our African investments, but we are also proud of the fact that we're also helping Africans manage their political risk and their currency risk by giving them
Mhm.
access to global platforms.
Okay. So let's say in the area of venture funding, what are some of the sectors? Is it textiles? Is it manufacturing? Is it agriculture? Is it aviation? Is it transportation? Is it which are some of the areas that you're seeing significant results on the
Okay, so we've
motherland?
turned our attention in recent times to the content sector, and that's
Content.
because
You mean content development?
content, yes, media
Okay.
and content. And
Okay.
that's because we've seen that African content is now becoming valuable globally. So if you look at what has happened in our music,
Mm.
with the rise of Afro beats
Yes.
globally, when you look at what's happening in the movie
Hmm.
sector as well. I mean, Disney just, creating an African animated series. So we're seeing a lot of interest in terms of African content and media. So that's
Hmm.
what we're focused on. Obviously, because of the success of the Black Book, which was our we were the majority investor in that movie.
Hmm.
We've decided we're going to focus on that for the next 5 years and just
Hmm.
do a lot more funding around the movie and
Okay.
content sector.
Okay. People are hungry for African ideas. That's what I hear
Oh,
you
yes.
saying.
Yeah.
And here's when I knew that Africa is not serving her values, her stories, her content enough to the world. 2003, I was in Singapore. I lived there at the time. And Yusundo came to perform from Senegal, came to perform at the Esplanade, which is a super beautiful, ultra modern concert center on the shores of Singapore. And there were so many performers, and I'd watched most of them. But when Yusundo stepped on stage, the place was electrifying. People could not get enough of him. And the standing ovation was a prolonged one. And the media wrote about it, said, this is just, it's time for Africa. The media was talking about it. And
No.
fortunately, I'd been living there for a while, but I said to myself, there's a desire, there's a strong desire for African content. Maybe we're not serving enough of it. So I'm very happy that you have picked up that need. And Yusundu is clearly is a mega star. But later on, I started to realize African content, Afrobeat is penetrating even to schools
Oh,
in
yes.
Asia. In Asia, think about that. Think about it. And that's when I realized, oh, this is something much bigger than we thought. So you're saying you're putting more and more money into
Oh
content,
yes.
and you're
Oh
already
yes.
seeing some breakthroughs.
Oh
You
yes.
don't, maybe you could share about that milestone, the one that you did with Netflix. How did you work that?
Yeah, so when you look at the director, Edith F. Young, I mean, he's a brilliant gentleman who had a story to tell, and
Mhm,
his vision was to make it global.
mhm.
And that's one of the things I value about African creators who think global. So you're
Yes,
not thinking just about
local.
African distribution alone, you're thinking, how do we tell our stories
Yes,
globally?
yes.
So when he came to us, obviously to raise funding for the movie. I mean, it's because I mean, we've heard of his work. We've seen some of the things he's done in the
Mhm.
movie sector,
Space.
and we were
Yeah.
pretty convinced that this vision was going to succeed. And he told
Mhm.
us about the partnership with Netflix to offtake the film. Again, going back to the community model.
Mhm.
There's no way we could have individually become the largest funder of that film if we didn't have a
Yes.
community behind us.
There you go.
So it
There you
was the
go.
community as an institution that
Yes.
became the executive producer of
Yes.
that film. And for us, this was the first time it had ever been done in Africa that a
Wow.
cooperative would
Mhm.
be the executive producer of a film. It was
Yes.
a completely radical model that had never been done
Mm.
before. And within that cooperative, we then had hundreds of people in the
Mm.
background who
Yes.
pulled funds together
Yes.
into that single entity and that single investment that we did. And of course, I mean, the rest is history. The Black Book became the global number one Netflix movie for a number of days. It was number one in Asia, it was number one in the Caribbean, number one
Think
in
about that.
Africa, even
Think
in the
about that.
US for a couple
Think about
of
that.
hours, it was number one. So, I
Yes.
mean, it just shows you for us, that's almost like a case study
Yes.
again of the power of community investing.
Yes. And he came to you
Oh, yes.
because of the power of word
Yes.
of mouth, the power of the
Yes.
community. Someone told him
Yes.
about. I imagine there are thousands of ADFians out there and other
Yes.
creators who have not
Mm.
heard about your work. Where
Mhm.
can they find you online, or where can they? Obviously, there should be multiple places, maybe Nigeria, maybe US, Cayman Islands, and where can they find you online for other
So I mean,
creators who
they
are
can
watching?
find us on our website. So I mean, if they go to volitioncap.com, that's typically like the main landing page for
Okay,
a lot of the work.
volitioncap.com.
Yeah, .com, and so they
Okay,
would find us as long
okay.
as they have a project,
Hmm.
that is well thought out, well
Hmm.
put together. It already has a pitch deck. They've done
Hmm.
some work in terms of
Hmm.
the screenwriting, so it's
Hmm.
almost ready,
Hmm.
to go. As long as they have something, that is worth investing in. We're just really interested in telling our stories, and it
Hmm.
has to be a story with global potential. So
Okay,
we're looking for stories that can go global, not
okay.
just stories that will be limited to Africa
To Africa.
alone.
Okay. And I know if a story is well told
Yes.
and the value, the
Mm.
takeaway, the lesson, the gift of that story, if it's well told, it has universal
Oh
application.
yes. Oh yes.
Sometimes we limit it by not giving it a global perspective. If we don't create, if we don't identify the human threat in it, the value, the virtue in it, if you can identify the virtue, it would obviously cut across continents.
Yes.
So, about how much was
We
it?
need more funding. Just to buttress that. So when you look at African stories, we have a lot of African mythology. So
Yes,
when you look at the culture, the history, you know, can you imagine a Marvel movie based on an African mythological
yes,
character? Yeah,
absolutely.
and we need a lot of funding because to do a movie at that level, I mean, of your special effects, your
Yes,
CGI, those
yes,
are like significant,
yes,
significant
yes,
costs.
yes.
But I'm really waiting, for someone who's going
Wow.
to tell that African story about
Yes,
African mythology and
yes,
African history. I mean, that would be so
yes.
fantastic.
It'll be earth shattering. Like I was emceeing or moderating an event
Yeah.
somewhere with about 3,000 Africans in diaspora. These are heavy hitters. They are people top of their industry,
Mhm.
and it had to do with the world of finance. I asked them who is the wealthiest person that's ever lived. And so Bill Gates, Elon Musk. I'm like, guys, get the heck out of
Oh,
here.
no.
Go work on the history books. You have no concept where you come from.
Oh,
We
no.
are standing on the shoulders of the greatest humans that have ever lived. Then when I said to, fortunately, some of them knew it was Mansa Musa. I said, where did
Yeah,
Mansa Musa come from? They said, Mali. I
yeah.
said, okay, that's an untold story.
It's an untold story.
People think that others have been wealthier than us. We are the original creators of wealth. We are the people that could cause economies to collapse. When he did his pilgrimage to Mecca, Egypt collapsed. Europe was
Yeah,
like
like
staring like Europe,
it always gets me really angry, the fact that we don't tell our
our own
own
stories.
stories. So, for
Thank you.
example, the fact that a lot of people think that the Wall of China is one of the single largest structures in the world, and we forget that the Wall of Benin in Nigeria was actually more massive than
There
the
you go.
Great Wall of China.
There you
And the
go.
fact that we don't tell those stories, even
Thank
what
you.
we've done in terms of geography, when you look
Yes.
at the map of the world, and
Yes.
Africa is much bigger. If we were
Yes.
to draw the map of the world to real
In
scale,
real terms. Thank
Africa is
you.
actually much bigger,
Much.
than a lot of the other
Thank you.
continents. So it is
Thank
those
you.
types of stories that we need to actually tell. And if we don't
Absolutely.
tell those stories ourselves, nobody's going to tell those stories
No,
for us.
nobody has any interest in that. Nobody's going to do that for us. And so the awakening that I'm seeing now is the thing that gets me excited, whether it's
Yeah,
Afrobeats, whether it's these diaspora movements that are surging
yeah,
up in all places. And I still remember uh, some of the work that you do at the African think tank and how you are working on different areas, parenting, finance, real estate, all of those. That's the awakening that we need
oh,
to finally get more people, critical mass of people that will start to tell our stories with confidence.
yeah. Mhm.
Viola Davis did a movie about the Dahomey Kingdom or the
Yeah, the King
Kingdom.
Woman, yes.
Yes, so that was powerful, but I never heard about that. And I feel
Yeah.
that I'm very, very curious. So there's
Hmm.
so much in terms of African content that we don't know. The Zulu Kingdom,
Oh, yes.
unbeatable, unbeatable. The British could not beat them. They could not
Yeah.
beat them. They could not beat the Zulus. And we're only scratching on the surface. We've not gone into Kenya. We've not gone into in Tanzania. We've not gone into all the other fascinating parts of Africa that we seldom talk about. So there's so much content that could come out of Africa. So besides content, um, what other industries are you putting money into? Is it agriculture? Because I also know that agriculture is very, very promising. People don't think about that very often, but I see a lot of promise for agriculture. Are you investing in agricultural programs?
We're doing more of commodities because there's a regulated exchange. There are two regulated exchanges for commodities in Africa.
Mhm.
And for us, we're very, very careful about risk because we really hold a lot of people's monies and livelihoods. So one of the things we've seen, obviously because of the war, in Ukraine, a lot of the what's going on, the conflicts in the Palestine, the Israeli
Mhm.
conflicts, the prices of commodities are rising. And
Yes,
Africa should be the food basket of the world.
of the world.
So when you look at a lot of the resources, the arable land
Yes.
that we have in Africa, we're just now getting to the point of creating global commodities exchanges. So one of the
Mhm.
things we're doing is putting a lot of money in commodities. When you look
Mhm.
at how the price of cocoa in the last couple of months
I
has
heard it's gone up.
skyrocketed.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's an area instead of focusing on just production
Mhm.
in terms of agricultural production, we're looking at commodities and commodities exports. How can
Mm.
Africa begin to get the real value? So
Okay.
beyond just internal consumption, the
Mhm.
real money is in exports for Africa.
Mm.
So how can we meet our domestic consumption first so that we have
Mhm.
food security?
Mhm.
And then how do we export the surplus so that
Yes.
Africa can get foreign exchange? So
I
that's one
see.
of the things that we're focused on.
Okay, so if I understand well, you are putting money into areas of commodities. That means you
Oh, yes.
acquire and hold
Yes.
it so that you can sell at the right time.
Yes. That's
Okay,
that's
now
what we
that
do.
makes sense. Now that makes sense. And I know that it's a powerful area because cocoa, which has been the backbone of economies such as Nigeria, well, not so much. Nigeria doesn't need a cocoa very much. Cameroon depended on cocoa a lot. Ivory Coast, Ghana, for a long time. And then when cocoa collapsed, I know families. I know guys that could not, their parents could not buy them books
Oh,
because
yes.
of collapse, cocoa collapse. So commodities like coffee, cocoa,
Mm.
and tea and
Mhm.
others. So you're beginning to look in those areas, or are you
Oh,
already
yes.
investing in those areas?
Yes. We're already investing in those areas.
Okay, fantastic. Now let's go back very briefly to the content area again. About how
Mhm.
much did you put into the into Black Book, and about how much came out in terms of maybe return on investment? I want to get some people to be so fired up, like they cannot. Like, please, can you give her number? Can you? Which I'm not going to give you a number. I'll say, please go to Volition Capital.
So we did an initial investment of 250,000.
Okay.
We're now doing follow-on investment. So thankfully, because of that initial deal, we got the rights of first refusal for subsequent deals. So now we're doing a multi-picture
Mhm.
deal with
Mhm.
Anaco Films. And in terms of the return, we made about a 50% return in the local currency.
Wow.
The good thing about content is if you get an off taker, a global off taker, is a way to
Yes.
earn foreign exchange as well.
Yes. Yes.
Because
Yes.
in Netflix, for example, will pay in USD.
Yes.
So
So it
it's
multiplies it.
Oh, yeah. So it's one of
Yeah.
the things we're looking at now, that
Okay.
how do we tell African stories to a global audience so that we're
Mhm.
also earning foreign exchange
Why
for
not?
Africa?
Thank you.
That's very, very important
Very important
for us.
because it could triple or
Yeah.
quadruple the earnings.
Yes.
Um, when you talk about content, it could be movies. What about music? Are you interested in music? Because African music is becoming very
Yeah, it
global.
is. It
Uh,
is. I
uh,
mean, it's one of the areas we're looking at, especially concert venues. So we
mm,
don't have the same, type of, massive concert venues you find in the West.
yes.
There are not that many indoor venues. Yes, we have stadiums,
Mhm.
outdoor venues
But they're
and
different.
things like that. But
Yes.
we don't have like the, top of the line, a lot of
Mhm.
indoor venues.
Event
So
centers.
even
Yeah.
in terms of just the revenue you can get, from concerts and
Mhm.
things like that.
Mm,
Obviously, I mean, I'm sure you've heard that a lot of the musicians are complaining about streaming, that they don't get a lot of money,
yes.
from streaming. So the real
Yes.
money in music is the concerts and the merchandising, the
Okay.
endorsements.
Yes.
That's really the real money. Like in Nigeria, we have something we call Dirty December, where every December you have some of the top Afrobeats artists make a lot of money because December is like the party season
Yes.
in Nigeria.
But they call
So
it
when
dirty. I thought they call it the cleanest or the golden December. They call it dirty December. It should be
that's it.
golden December. It should be.
So we're looking at things like that. How can
Okay.
we finance? So for those who are interested in building,
Mm,
concert venues around Africa, it's something that we're very
mm,
interested in, because we know
yes.
that that piece of infrastructure for the
Yes.
next 30 to 50 years,
Yes.
it's something that would generate a lot of revenue,
Revenue. Yes.
particularly for the artists,
Yes.
that want to, perform to a local
Audience.
audience. So that
Yes.
for us is important.
Okay. That, of course, I can see how that's definitely a cash cow, both short term, long term, because there's a stream of new
Yeah.
talent that is beginning to
Oh,
tell our stories through music.
yeah.
And here's when I realized this is for real. I watched a Google production at Google headquarters
Hmm.
featuring Mr. Easy. I'm sure you probably have heard
Wow.
about Mr. Easy. 2017, this
Hmm.
young, talented uh, musician who was trained as a mechanical engineer
Oh,
was at the
yeah.
Google headquarters talking about the processes, the back office,
Hmm.
and what he's been able to do in terms of understanding the algorithm, in terms of watching what the algorithm tells him when he's testing out his material and taking his
Hmm.
shows to countries such as Ukraine. And when he's
Hmm.
performing, he's watching Ukrainian young girls sing back. He's wondering,
Hmm.
what the? At this, you mean I have such outreach? Yes, he said he did have that kind of outreach. So they were not trying
Hmm.
just to murmur. He'll turn the mic and send it to them, and you can hear them uh, uh, sing it back to him. That's when I knew that we got to take our stories. We got to take ownership of our content, our abilities, our God given talent seriously. And then here's the best part, I saw the Google executives taking notes.
Yeah.
They were taking notes. That's when I knew our messages are not to be taken lightly. And so that's why I asked
Because
about
you've
music.
seen Korea do it. If you've looked at the explosion of K-pop,
Yeah.
K-drama,
Yeah.
like people are beginning to learn Korean
Yes.
simply because they want to understand the music, they want to understand
Exactly.
the drama.
Exactly.
Like, I mean, it's fascinating, like the way people come out in the West
Of course.
when these K-pop artists,
Yes.
BTS,
It's
and the
crazy.
like, when
It's
they show
crazy.
up for concerts,
It's
so
unbelievable.
they've seen how one culture has been able to do that, and
Yes.
everyone knows the African culture is next.
Yes.
Everyone can see that the
Yes.
way we're going, like
Yes.
it's going to be the next cash cow in
It
content.
it has to be. It definitely has to be. And the truth is, it's just a matter of time because I've been fortunate to sit in classes in Africa, in Asia, in America, and I know there's nowhere that I'm more intimidated. Our people are smart. They're very, very, very smart. They're wickedly smart. We don't get enough credit for it. So if they can succeed in intellectually to harness that and begin to channel it into different areas that can leverage more finance and help them generate wealth, they're going to do it. So I see that happening, and I cannot wait to see more of them come out and do more of this, myself included. I'm also challenging myself with this platform to say, okay, uh, who do I reach out to, who has what message? So the people that I really bring here, people that I know that they're going to add some spot. They're going to add some new understanding of the world. And what you're bringing to us is very unique because there might be an artist in Congo, in Gabon, in Liberia, in Sierra Leone who is listening to you and they're doubting, can they help me? Can she help me? So along the lines of content, people that are watching, DJs, there are African DJs that are millionaires in South Africa,
Oh
and I'm
yeah.
sure there is some in Nigeria, but maybe not in the other countries. So the people that are content creators who are looking and say, what can we get from Volition Capital? What would you say to them that are listening, watching, and like, oh man, I could be the next big thing, and I have a story to tell. What is your advice to them?
Yeah, I always say once you have something in the form of a pitch deck, that's usually the first. So you never approach anybody for finance without having your
Pitch deck.
pitch deck ready, without running your numbers, without knowing what your value proposition is. So it's at that point that you can reach out to us. And like I said, I gave the website volitioncap.com, and just tell us your idea. Give us, we include the link to your pitch deck so that we can just
Okay.
click on it and just go, read what
Okay.
your value proposition is.
Okay.
As long as you have something and you've clearly thought it out that this is how it's going to make money for Africa or for the world, this is how it's going to help tell our stories, this is how it's going to go global. Because, like I said, we're looking for global stories. We're not looking at
Okay.
stories that end in Africa alone. So as long as you have all of those pieces in place, then please feel free to send us a message and just include the link so that we can immediately go look at what you have.
Okay, amazing. I'm glad you clarified that. Volitioncap.com. Volitioncap.com. And if you don't know how to spell volition, all right, send me a send me a message. I'll help you with that. That's the one area that I think I can help with. If you need money, go on Plumter, don't come to me. I can buy you coffee, but I cannot give you a lot of money to go and do something big. So, okay, we identified content. We have identified commodities. Which are the other areas where you see sparks coming? You see a hope. You see things coming through that would bring
There's a lot.
honor,
The
glory to our
thing I
people.
love about Africans, and I must give it to Africans, we're early adopters. So anytime there's a new opportunity for wealth or a new opportunity for technological advancement, Africans. So when I look at what we've done with cryptocurrency, we don't give a lot of credit to cryptocurrency in Africa. So we talk about the bad parts, the scams, and some of the negative aspects, but we don't give credit to the fact that African countries were among the top 10 users of cryptocurrencies globally. That's massive.
Yes,
That's
definitely.
massive. And
Wow.
what cryptocurrency can do in terms, because it's new wealth. America has regulated it. The minute America regulated it, African countries, because once America regulated it, it became global. It became
Mm,
an institutional source of wealth. So what
Mm,
Africans are doing is they've left the table because of fear, because of suspicion, because they're trying to control their currencies
mhm,
artificially.
mhm,
They've left the fact that cryptocurrency can actually be a wealth creator for a lot
mhm,
of Africa, because the level with which Africans are trading cryptocurrency,
mhm,
even without it being regulated in Africa, that should tell you that there's an
mhm.
interest. And
Yes.
Africa needs to have a framework for taxing cryptocurrency, for
Mhm,
ensuring that it goes through legitimate, banking and financial platforms. All of those things are frameworks. And
mhm,
America has already done the work in
mhm,
terms of the legislation. So it's easy to
mhm,
then adopt, based on that initial framework that has been done. But I see a lot of African countries, they've exited the conversation. And
mhm,
it's just so sad, so sad, because when I look at the amount of foreign currency that could be earned in Africa through
mhm,
cryptocurrency, through licensed and regulated,
mhm.
cryptocurrency transactions, I'm really just so sad.
Wow. I have to admit, as far as crypto goes, I'm a late adopter. I have not even come to the party yet. I've been reading up a little about it, but still very skeptical about it. But I admit, I know friends, I know sisters, I know brothers who have made good money in that arena. So, is there any role, since you are avant-garde, you're for the future of Africa. You're not going backward. Is there any role you can play? Volition Cap can play to uh, help the next generation
I
of
mean, we're open
creators.
to advising governments because we're, like I say, we're a global company.
Mhm.
So for example, our global fund trade. We have a fully staffed trading desk, and cryptocurrency
Oh,
is one of the things that we trade. It's a Pan-African team, people from
mhm.
Kenya, South Africa, and the like. Now, so what we can do is help advise governments on how to regulate cryptocurrency, how to generate taxes from, because a lot of times we feel Africans don't want to pay tax. We don't mind paying tax as long as it's transparent. Let it be transparent and let it be easy. Don't put several hurdles.
Yeah. Too many,
Yeah. So
too many
there's
layers of
yeah, so
bureaucracy.
there's
Yeah.
a lot of tax income that government can earn, and it will be done transparently through legitimate banking channels
Mhm.
without having any impact in terms of currency and things. So there are a lot of controls that
Mhm.
can be put in place to ensure that it doesn't have a negative impact on
Yes.
the currencies of different African countries. But we just feel like it's almost like Africa just stepped away from that
Yes.
conversation, and the
Yes.
US has now regulated it. And
Mhm.
based on what we're seeing in terms of just the growth of that sector in
Yeah.
the US, that should give African governments some room to pause and consider that
Yes.
perhaps this is not a bad invention. It
Mhm.
just needs to be properly regulated.
Yes, and I think it's maturing. It's still in its volatile teenage years, so
Oh,
it's
yes.
up and down. But
Yeah.
after a while, it's going to stabilize. Look at Web 2.0. It was very
Yeah.
volatile for a while, but now it's somewhat, we know it's a predictable ecosystem. It's helping people to generate a lot of wealth. So I think that there is a lot that we can talk about, but I have to respect your time. In terms of not how much Volition Cap is worth, but in terms of how much have you been able to raise so far?
Okay, so for the investment community, because we tend to look at the investment community as separate from our traditional asset management
Okay.
business. So for the investment community, we currently control about $30 million in assets under management, and these are from average middle class
Mhm.
people who are just contributing $100 here, $1,000,
Yes.
there, and
Yes.
just in aggregating all of that over the last couple of years, we've been able to
Yes.
control about $30 million,
30
and
million.
we're still growing.
That's a lot
Um,
for less than 5 years, right?
yeah, we're still growing, and really
So,
for us, it's the power of the community
so
that as people just realize that come together. Don't. Yes, there's a lot of distrust. There's a lot of skepticism sometimes within African communities. But I think if we go with the model that we've created, where you put that licensed fiduciary in the middle, it helps to
mm,
dispense a lot of the distrust
yes,
within the community.
yeah. If you're less than 5 years, and you already like raised almost like 30 million. That's a lot, especially because we're talking about everyday people.
Yes.
That's a lot. So if you can look at it when it becomes 10, becomes 20, I can see that quadrupling and doing a whole lot more. In which cities are you active in Africa, and which cities are you active? Yeah,
We're
let's
actually
start with,
Pan-African because remember
okay.
I said we have an online platform.
Hmm.
So we've seen people coming from Kenya, we've seen people coming from South Africa, from Cameroon
Hmm.
as well. In the diaspora, we have members from Canada, from the US, from the UK. A lot of our members are people that have, some African descent. So there's a lot of interest in Africans wanting to invest in a community of
Yes,
other people with African, of African descent. So we're
yes,
beginning to see a lot of diasporans who just want
yes,
to join
yes,
our community, and they're not satisfied with the Western models because they've
yes,
tried the Western models, and the
yeah.
Western models have not given them, the
Mhm.
sort of return, particularly as middle class. If you're rich, you don't have a problem, but if you're middle class,
Yeah,
you
they don't
have
need you. If they're so
you need to
stinking rich,
accelerate your wealth.
yeah, they're stinking rich. They don't need you, but you're for everyday heroes who are working, cleaning homes, who are,
Oh yeah, we
you
are the
know,
ones who need
yeah,
help. So
yeah. Those are
it's
the people that need help for sure.
yeah.
And
So that's where we've kind of found our members, and we for us we're just interested in also helping communities replicate our model. So we're not selfish. Like if we were invited by a community and they say, "Oh, we have a community of 50 people, 100 people. Can you please show us how to replicate the same model within our own
mhm,
smaller community?" There may be churches that might have a
mhm,
community, there might
mhm,
be some cultural clubs that
mhm.
have a community. When we're not we're open to sharing the model with
Oh,
those communities, because for us we want as many African communities as possible to grow.
wow, wow,
So
that
for
is.
us, it's we're willing to share,
Oh,
the information and to just help people create their own micro
yes.
communities wherever they are.
Wow, that is unbelievable. And again, it is truly African that if you're eating a yam, sweet yam, a white yam, uh, a plantain, we can share. And I cannot help but share this analogy that my wife shared last week or so. So her younger sister was finishing graduating with a doctoral program. One of three sisters, each of them has finished doctoral program. She said, in our home, we were very poor, uh, not very poor, but we're middle class. Dad was a school headmaster. Mom was somebody who sold stuff by the roadside, and that if dad is coming home after work, working for the Catholic mission, he could buy a fish or two, and we know exactly who's going to eat the fins. We know exactly who's going to eat the eye. We know exactly who's going to eat the tail, and that was the normal. So it was so interesting. It's a spirit of sharing, and this is
Oh
what
yeah.
I hear you sharing that sharing that if you have a church or a community, a cultural group that wants to learn your model, you'll be happy to share that model with them. So
Yes.
basically, some can say, "Thank goodness we learned this from you. We empower ourselves and we pass it on to others." That is the Ubuntu spirit. And in my dialect, they say, "Ayamba, Ayambamba." It's us versus us. So, madam, let's end here by I want to ask you just some quick questions, quick answers. All right. Is that okay? Are you ready?
Oh yes, I'm ready.
Okay. What's your best book you've read so
Oh, my
far?
best book is A Short History of Nearly Everything by Bill Bryson. So it's a
Short,
book that talks about science, culture, history, a short history of nearly
nearly
everything
everything. Wow,
by
wow.
Bill
Never,
Bryson. I
never
read
heard
that
about it.
book like every 2 years. I go back and just read it.
No kidding. I need to write it. A short history of nearly everything. I never heard about that. Bill Bryson. Okay. Bill Bryson. Whoever you are, I'm coming for you. Okay. All right. Next one. Uh, if you had to meet with somebody you admire
Mhm.
for coffee, for tea, for drink vanilla or maybe latte, who is that person that you would like to sit around the table and just?
I would say Jesus Christ.
Oh man.
I would say because when I look at all the other people I admire, I can read their books, I
Yeah.
can check out their YouTube content. There's really no business person that I want to
Okay.
learn from that I can't really like
Okay.
just
Okay.
get that. But if I had to choose somebody human, if I
Okay.
had to choose somebody human, I would say the lady that started Spanx. That
Ah.
for me is,
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
she's no longer there. She's actually sold the company.
Yeah.
But that's someone that I really would like to meet. I'm just trying to. Her
Oh.
name just skipped my mind, but
Yeah.
I'm just trying to check
Is she
for
African
it.
American or was she African
Yes,
American?
she's
No.
American actually.
Okay. Yes. Yes.
She's American. Let me just get her name.
Okay.
Yeah, she's
Wow.
someone I've
That's
read
it.
her story.
Yes.
Sarah Blakely. Yes, Sarah
Okay.
Blakely.
Sarah,
Yes,
Sarah
I've read her
Blakely.
story. I've
Yes.
watched her masterclass
Hmm.
series, and I just thought, oh, she was a very inspirational figure, a woman who started,
Yeah.
from nothing and eventually built this, multi-billion
Massive
dollar
empire. There you go.
company. So that's at least that's someone that I admire in terms of just someone of the female gender who just,
Yeah. 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 From nothing.
developed something so massive. Yeah.
Thank you. As for Christ, Christ, wherever you are, please, you heard that call, you heard that request.
We need to do
Please
coffee.
send, send send me a little text, send a message, or send a something like a tweet to her and talk about coffee. Maybe
Oh
he'll send
gosh.
his representative who is still
Yes.
around. That's how he works, right? He doesn't
Oh
always
yeah.
show up in person. He sends one of his reps to talk to you.
Yeah.
So that one is out of
Oh
my it's out of my
gosh.
reach. Okay. Tea or coffee? Which do you prefer?
Oh, coffee. I'm a coffee person.
Coffee. All right. I
Yeah.
promise one day I have to buy you coffee when your time permit.
Oh
I know we
yeah.
had to try several weeks, but I know this is very, very worth it. So coffee on me
Yeah.
next time if
Yeah.
you're open to that and okay with that. And then uh vanilla or um chocolate.
Oh, chocolates.
Okay. That's truly
Chocolates.
African.
Yeah. I mean,
Truly
I love
African.
coffee, so I like dark things.
Okay. Okay. Final one. Black coffee or coffee without milk? Creamer.
Black. Black.
Black. Wow.
Yes.
That is a very, very black. This has been a very black interview. A lot of prolific ideas about making wealth.
Yeah.
This has been an absolute pleasure, madam.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for your time so much. But more importantly, thank you for what you do to our people, for being willing to put yourself out there to help other people to learn the skills that you have mastered, to empower everyday heroes who are working in the shadows and doubting, will I be able to retire? Will I be able to retire with dignity? Will I be able to make something of myself? Maybe not become a millionaire, but nothing wrong with that. You have
Yeah.
figured out most of this and you are sharing this knowledge with us. Thank you so much. Do you have any
Thank you.
last word for those who may be watching and thinking, can I make my own $1 million? Those that are thinking, can I be able to make my own $1 million? What message you have for them? The final word.
Yeah,
How to make a
I
million
mean,
dollars.
I always end with this that just as it takes a village to raise a child, it takes a community to create generational wealth. Don't try to
Mm.
do it alone, do it with others.
Thank you so much. It takes a village to raise a child. It takes a community to make $1 million. So thank you so much. From the Story Warrior, I want to say it also takes a village to retell and
Mhm.
continue telling. So subscribe, share, and let us get every member of our village, our community, to be aware of these stories on how to become millionaires, how to become successful, so that we can serve more people. Thank you so much, man.
Thank you. Take care.
Appreciate
Bye
it.
bye.
Okay. You have a great day.
Bye.